Hey guys, welcome to Podcast Fandom Premium. I'm your host Nina, and I am back to start coverage of a brand new show. And as it stands now, I'm going to be covering this show by myself. It is the first show I'm covering in my return to full time podcasting this summer. And this is really exciting for me because I, as most of you know, have been learning the Korean language for the past 2 years. Has it been 2 years? Hold on, let me think. End of 2018 to 19, 19 to 20. More than 2 years. Good God. Yeah, I started in the fall of 2018. Yeah. And so one of the things that had been suggested to me by other Korean learners, Korean language learners, is immersing yourself in K dramas and the music to help with your listening comprehension and expanding your vocabulary. And so I've been trying to do that. But again, you guys know I have been in school for the past 2 years as well, and still trying to maintain some level of podcasting while running the site and the podcast. So I didn't get to experience as much Korean television as I would like over the past 2 years. So we're going to fix that. Today I'm going to be talking about a show called Beyond Evil. It is a critically acclaimed Korean drama. It is available on Netflix, and I'm going to be talking about it 2 episodes at a time every Friday. Although I am recording this one a bit late by a few hours. I'm actually recording this on Saturday morning. There's a feedback post up on Patreon, so if you want to watch along and leave your thoughts, just remember I'm doing 2 episodes at a time every Friday, so you can get your feedback in. Just make sure you list which episodes you're talking about, and be careful not to spoil me. Please try to keep up with the schedule to know which episodes I'm on. And if you are listening to this now and you're not listening to it on Patreon, that means you're listening to it for free somewhere else, like Stitcher or iTunes or Spotify. That's because every time we kick off a new show on our premium podcast on Patreon, we release the first episode for free. So I hope you enjoy this little sneak peek. And if you want to hear me talk about the rest of the season and other shows with my co-hosts, John, Kaylee, and Donnie, I talk about Loki and Attack on Titan and Westworld and a whole bunch of other stuff. Head over to patreon.com/podcastfandom and become a premium subscriber. But for now, we're going to talk about Beyond Evil. So, this came highly recommended when I announced my plans to start podcasting full time, and my desire to dive into Korean dramas. And you guys know me well. You've been listening to me talk about TV for years now, and you know what I like. You know what's gonna get me, and for the most part, you guys don't steer me wrong. So this was highly recommended, particularly by my friend Early, who is a K drama connoisseur. So I trust her. It was described as a slow burn, as a psychological thriller, lots of twists and turns to keep you guessing. And like I said, it is pretty critically acclaimed. If I'm not mistaken, it won two high level awards. I'm going to tell you that right now. So it won at the Baeksang Art Awards. It won Best Drama and Best Screenplay and Best Actor. Shin Ha-kyun. Who does he play? Hold on a second. It is Lee Dong-sik. Okay. Not surprised. He's really good. And like I said, Best Screenplay, Soo-jin Kim. So it won those 3 awards: Best Drama, Best Screenplay, Best Actor, and then it was nominated for Best Director, Best New Actress, Best Supporting Actor, and a technical award. Who was the Best Supporting Actor nominated? Choi Dae-hoon. I don't know who this person plays. Let's see. Ah, Park Jong Jae. Ah, okay, I know which character this is. Interesting, interesting. Okay, so let's talk about it. Like I said, I'm gonna be talking about the first two episodes. Like I said, it's called Beyond Evil. It stars Shin Ha Kyun as Lee Dong Shik. Uh, like I said, he just won, or he did win Best Actor for this at the Baeksang, I believe the art awards are called. He plays Lee Dong Shik, and I'm just going to name the two main characters right now. And then Yeo Jin Gu as Han Ju Won. So let's dive into it. Let me pull up my notes. I'm so excited to talk about this. I'm so happy I like it as much as I do. So the episode titles are easy to remember, episode 1 and 2. I kind of like that when they don't have episode title names. It makes it easier for me podcasting. But so I'm going to admit something now as we start talking about this. You guys, I was so lost. Like, I, I don't know um, if if it's the language, because I'm still learning. I'm not super fluent by any means. Um, so obviously, I'm watching it with English subtitles because, again, not that fluent. And I don't know what it was about this first episode that I feel like when it got to the end, I was like, wait, what? Like, I did not understand what had happened in the past and what we were supposed to believe happened. And I don't know if that's by design. So I'm really curious for those of you who watched it as well. Like, were they trying to throw us off, or was I just stupid? It is quite possible that I was just real dumb watching this first episode. But by the time I got to the end, I will admit that I was like, oh yeah, I didn't realize that's what was going on. But it begins in like present day with Dong Shik. He is, I think it's pretty clear when it opens, he's a police officer, right? Maybe it's just because of the way he was like running through with the flashlight in the reed fields. But he's in the real reed fields with, as it turns out, I just wrote this character's name down in another list. Hold on. He's in a reed field with Ojihwa. So just in case, I hope this isn't condescending. Like, if you haven't watched Korean dramas before, or if you're not very familiar with Korean culture, if you are, please just skip right over me explaining this. Like I said, I don't mean to be condescending, but just in case. So in Korea, they list their surnames first. So when I say Lee Dong Shik as a character, his last name is Lee and his name is Dong Shik. So they don't Tong Shik really. They don't do middle names. So his character's name is Dong Shik, but Lee Dong Shik, you'll hear them refer to him as such because they put the surname first. And the character he's with in the beginning in the reed field, the one that's screaming his head off, is Jihwa, and his last name is Oh. So Oh Jihwa. And it turns out this is his partner, right? But again, I'm not sure that we realized this in the beginning, but Chihua is screaming his head off because he found a corpse. And when Dongshik finally finds out where he is and he comes running over, he sees what looks like, um, okay, I'm not sure what was going on with this corpse because I think it was very clear that it was like a woman for some reason. And maybe that's just because of, the reality of being a woman. Like, we expect these things, to happen to women. And certainly shows like this really, for the most part, when you have psychological thrillers with serial killers, they tend to make their victims women. But it looked like two hands that were kind of together, like kind of clasped together almost in prayer. And something about like the skin on it, I can't tell if we're supposed to think that this body was submerged in something that affected the skin as it decomposed, or if it was like frozen. But it almost looked not like mummified, but like freeze dried. Like when you ever see those things, like you could do it to your clothes, like vacuum seal, but they have it for food too that keep, like, you put in your freezer, it makes it last longer. And so you put the meat in there and it just like sucks out all the air, and like the plastic just shrinks in and like attaches itself to the food. That's what this looked like to me. It looked like there was something over the skin. So I wasn't exactly sure. Clearly, I knew it was a dead body, but I wasn't sure, what we're supposed to think happened to this body and why it was in that condition. And then and Dongshik stares at this for in a very creepy way, and I get why later, but in the beginning, I was just like, why is he like? Does he know this person? Because there's very little explanation. But then we get a flashback to October 14th, the year 2000, and Dongshik's mother is at church with her sister, and I guess there's some sort of like program about to take place, and her daughter, whose name I wrote down somewhere else. Let me make sure. Yu Yon. I think her name is Yu Yon. She is playing the piano, and apparently, uh, the sister is basically telling Dongshik's mom, like, thank God Yu Yon is beautiful and smart and talented, because your other kid, Dongshik, he's a fucking idiot, and you know I'm right. And it was just so terrible. And I was like, who is this woman talking shit to this woman about her kids? It turns out it's her sister. Um, and as we speak of the devil, Dongshik is working at a cafe, apparently. And I wasn't clear, like, does he typically work there as like a busboy or a wait staff or a cashier or something? But in the scene that we first see him um, at the cafe, he's playing the guitar quite badly, and so he thinks he's going to like entertain customers, and he works with the owner's sister, and her name is, because this is important, her name is, don't tell me, oh god, where did I write it at? Chuson, right? Chuson. So we have, this is important now, and hopefully I'm saying this right. Yu Yon, which is his younger sister, I think younger sister, and Ju Sun, which is the girl who works at the cafe with him. And they don't get along. She is the daughter of the man who owns the cafe. And it's clear they don't get along, and they have some sort of argument. And Dongshik gets up in her face, and she's like, oh, what are you going to hit me? And he looked like, yeah, I'm going to fucking hit you. But he doesn't. He's like, good thing for you, I don't hit women. And I was like, I don't know if I believe that. Because you totally look like you're about to haul off and slap this girl. But he doesn't. He gives her like this really creepy look, and he leaves, and there's that. And her name is Pang. Is that her last name? Is it Pak? No, I think it's Park. Park Ju-son. Like I said, she's the boss's daughter. So shit gets real like that very night, I think. His sister, Yu Yeon, gets a text, and I believe it says something like, I don't feel like going into the house right now. Can you come outside? And so the first time I read that, I thought like I rewound the scene. I've only watched both these episodes once. So forgive me if I fuck up the details. You guys know I typically like to watch a couple of times. But time didn't permit this weekend. So anyway, the text at first I thought came from Dongshik, right? Because it sounded like, the phrasing to me read like, I don't feel like sneaking in and hearing mom and dad's mouth because I missed the church thing. Can you just come outside? But that's clearly not the case. Like, I don't think that's who we're supposed to think texted her. I don't know if it was like a girlfriend or a boyfriend, but she sneaks out, and she's walking by these reed fields down this like dark road when she hears screams. Now, considering what happens later, I like rewound it, and I was trying to figure out like if we can figure out what those screams are supposed to be. Like, they didn't sound like they were a female screaming from being hurt. It didn't even sound like it would be like a man, like a perpetrator for whatever reason yelling. It sounded almost animalistic, and I wondered if there is some like this sounds so dumb, but you guys know I'm a city girl, don't have a lot of experience with like farm animals, definitely not wild animals. And so I'm like, is that supposed to be like a sound that you would recognize if you are familiar with wildlife or farm animals? You know, this sounds so dumb. But I say that because and maybe he was kidding, but I was watching a video once with BTS talking, and one of them was saying, Yoongi was saying how, I think it's water deer, He's like, or water frogs? No, I think it's water deer. They make like really weird noises. And when they asked him, like, what do they sound like? Okay, like lower your volume. He goes something like, wah, wah. And it doesn't sound like, it sounds so ridiculous, but I think he was telling the truth. So in my head, when I saw this scene, I was like, is that some animal like I'm just not familiar with? But whatever, it freaks her the fuck out because all the street lights go out suddenly and she starts running. Now, instead of like turning around and running back home, which is what I thought she did, which is what I would have done, which is what I think you should do, she looks like she ran further away from home down the road. So, yeah, that happened. But then, so it does this like time lapse thing, right? So, like overnight, and then the next morning, there is clearly a female body bound in the reed field, uh, and dead, deceased, and her fingertips are missing. And then, so then now I'm thinking of the scene in the beginning, right? And I'm like, oh my God, did it take 20 years for them to find her body? Because again, the body had like this weird kind of decomposition to it. So I'm thinking, was she like preserved in something or, whatever. So I'm like, okay, the person that they find at the beginning is this girl and it's his sister. So then while this is going on, like nobody has seen the body yet, their mother, Dong Shik and Yuyon's sister, comes out in the morning and she finds 10 fingertips with clearly from a girl's hand with painted nails lined up on a bench outside her house. And she rightfully loses her shit because I think she recognizes those as her daughter's fingers. So I don't think I got. No, I did. Because at one point, like, so she's screaming and then they show the body and I'm like, wow, like she's going to go out there and like they're gonna find the rest of her, like her poor daughter. And I'm like, who did this? I'm like freaked out. But then I'm like, wait a minute, those aren't the clothes she was wearing when she left the night before. So I had to rewind it all the way back to the cafe scene, and sure enough, Ju Sun, the girl that he worked with, the boss's daughter, she was wearing those clothes, red skirt. So I'm like, wow, the sister's fingertips are there, and Jusun's body is out in the reed fields. So I think what I thought going into the episode was that the sister is presumed dead, and that no one has found, and that Jusun is missing, and no one's found her body. So that's what I thought had been going on for like 20 years. Completely wrong. So then on the screen it says the number 1 and then Natanade. And I looked it up and it just means appear one time, which threw me because I was not familiar with this phrase. And I'm not sure if that is a good translation. It, considering that when it appears on the screen and then we get a time jump 20 years, I think what this means is this was the first time this killer struck, right? In either, and I'm assuming it's the same person, right? Whoever cut off Yon's fingertips and took her or killed her is the same person that killed Jusun, right? But 20 years later, Dongshik is a cop. And I'm like, how'd that happen? He seemed to be a bit of a fuck up. Okay. He's a cop. He has a temper. He arrests a bunch of ajumas in a hair salon because they're gambling and shit. And he gets a new partner by the name of Han Juwon. Juwon is the son of like the second highest police officer in all of Korea. And his name is Han Ki-hwa. So there's obviously a bit of how do you say it, like kind of like unearned respect for this character for Juwon, right? Because people are walking on eggshells around him. It's kind of a big deal, but because of who his father is, I don't know if it's necessarily, although I think it's implied that he scored really well or he's some sort of like wonder cop. But this assignment, on the surface, I think we're supposed to believe this assignment is like a mandatory part of being a cop, where you know, like you have to do 6 months in a rural police station, like in a rural area. So you may want to work and live in Seoul and all of that, but like you have to put in your time and work in different precincts in different areas. And so I think on the surface, what we're to believe is that this is just part of his 6 month rotation. He has to work at this precinct for that time for that reason. And he and Dongshi really don't get along, and they're partnered together anyway. Because of that fact, the boss puts them together. There are certain names, please forgive me, um, that I'm gonna get better at as we go. Um, I'm only, I'm way more familiar than I used to be saying Korean names, but you guys know me. I'm very um, cautious of fucking up people's names. I think it's like so disrespectful. I try not to do it. Um, so there are a lot of characters that it was like the names are going by too fast. So as we get more into the series, just bear with me. I will make sure that I'm doing much better with the names. So the boss, Dong Shik's boss, and I don't know if he's like the chief of police of this precinct, but it turns out like he was the lead detective, I think, 20 years ago when the sister fingers were found and went missing, and when Juson's body was found. He was, I think, the lead detective on the case. And now he is the, like I said, he's the like chief of police here. And I think we learned that Ju-won's, his father, like I said, he's like top cop now. Han Kiwa. Kiwa was back then the person who did he decide to he made a decision in the case, and I think he might have been the one to make a decision to just declare it like a cold dead case because they never found out who kidnapped the sister and presumably killed her and who killed Juson. So that's what I think the relationship is right now, but I could be wrong. Um, and they get a report that Juson, she's the dead girl whose body was found in the reed fields 20 years ago and whose father owned the cafe that Dong Shik worked in. In present day, they get word that he's like gone missing or something. And I guess, in his grief, understandably, he began to drink a lot. And so I think the implication here is that he has a habit of just kind of wandering off and getting drunk. And they usually find him in the reed fields where his daughter's body was found, which is just terrible. Dongshik and Juwon go out to look for him. Um, Later, Juwon is forced to go to what they call a hueshik, which is like company food. I think it breaks down to, so you have huesa wan, which is a company employee, and then huesa, which is company, and then you have like umshik, which is food. So hueshik, it's like a company outing, like a company dinner, but what I have learned is that in Korea, these are really common, which, I guess is pretty common everywhere, right? For coworkers to go out after work, happy hour, that type of stuff, team building. However, what I think the difference is that I have learned that it is quite, offensive, that these things are presented kind of like um, voluntary, like, hey, you want to go out and get a drink after work? We're all going, but it is in fact low key mandatory and considered bad form to turn this down. So hueshik it is, and this is a time for us, I guess, to get to know the other detectives around the table, like in the precinct, and I guess throughout the series. And right now, the one I'm most familiar with is Dong Shik's partner. Like I said, he's the one in the reed fields with him in the beginning. Um, and his name is what? It's like I can remember his last name so easy. Oh, Jihua. Goodness gracious. So, when they're around this table, there's a little bit of talk of like how sensitive it is to bring up the fact that Ju-won's father is, a big deal in the police department. Um, and he is clearly uncomfortable with that. I think we later learn he doesn't have a very good relationship with his father, um, who basically, just looks at this assignment as, do what you got to do and get out. Um, and as he's leaving, as Juwan is leaving, where they choose to eat is in the cafe that I think. I'm trying to remember if Mr. Park, Juson's the dead girl's father, if he owns this place. But I know it's like connected to a meat market. And so when Juwan is leaving, Dongshik is in the meat market next door, and it's like, glass window, he can see right in, and he's like chopping meat. And they have this conversation where it feels like they're setting up this kind of cat and mouse relationship, right? Like, again, in the beginning, they show you Dongshik kind of having this contentious relationship with Jusun, and it's, like, she's like, were you gonna hit me? And it looked like he kind of wanted to, and then he like stares at her all creepily, and then she ends up dead, right? um and his sister is missing and presumed dead. So it feels like at this point in the episode, I'm like, oh, they're setting up, it's like cat and mouse, like, did he do it? And is this guy going to become suspicious of him? And so in this conversation, I think they talk about Mr. Park and the fact that they had to go find him out in those reeds earlier, which I didn't talk about too much, but I am going to talk about it when we talk about something that happens in episode 2. But and like why he cares so much and why he like looks out for this man. And Dong Shik says, like, dead ass serious, as he creepily fucking butchers meat, that he killed Mr. Park's youngest daughter. And then he was like, haha, just kidding. I was like, that's not funny. Um, and then, oh, why am I about to fuck up this guy's name? Juwon, right? Yeah. So Juwon then leaves there, and he goes and meets with this prosecutor who gives him information on the case. Like back then, like we learned that um, Dong Shik was in fact arrested for he was the suspect in Jusun's death and presumably his sister's death. And then we get from another flashback that about 8 or 9 months ago, fucking Ju-won was like setting up. Like, I'm not sure what they're investigating. Like, clearly they're talking about the case, like that cold case. So I don't know if he requested for this town so that he can go back into looking into this cold case. Um, I don't know if the powers that be decided they wanted to re-look into this case secretly, so they sent him there, and they, it's under the guise of, oh, this is just your 6 months rotation thing in a rural precinct, but you're really there to try to solve this case, and that they think that they had the right guy 20 years ago in Dongshik. Like, I'm not sure. That's how it kind of played to me, because he's presenting the evidence of the case to this room of other police personnel. Juwon is, and again, this is like 8 or 9 months ago, and he has surveillance footage of um, Dongshik present day as a cop, and he's like making special note of him. So I'm like, oh, okay, so he came here suspicious of Dongshik. I think that's what we're supposed to believe is happening. But in present day, we see that Dongshik is going out there like hanging up missing flyers for his sister still after 20 years. Um, and before that, before he goes out to hang those up, we see him like pulling them out of his basement. So he has several, and apparently this is just something he's, been doing. And if they're wanting us to think that this man, killed his sister, is responsible for his sister's disappearance, showing us this feels like either it's to throw the audience off or to show how demented he is. But currently, I'm thinking he's not. That this feels, even despite the way episode 2 ends, yes, I still don't feel like this is the case. There's no reason to show us certain things when he's alone. That if it's not him, other than it feels like they're designed to make us suspicious of him. So when you see him staring at the missing banner in the basement, like he takes one and then the rest fall on the floor, he just turns and he stares at them. Like, I think we're supposed to think that this is creepy, but it didn't necessarily read that way to me. Um, so they have to go back out. He gets a call, Juwan, from the boss that Mr. Pak is missing again, and they think he might be out in the reed fields. And Tongshik and his partner Jihua have already gone out there looking for him. And the boss tells Juwan, "You need to go too." And Juwan looks at his nice fancy shoes, and he's like, "Don't know if I like this podunk life." But he's out there in the muddy reed fields again. And this is the beginning of the episode where we see Jihua find this body and he's screaming. And what we see now that we didn't know at the beginning of the episode is that he's calling for Dongshik, but also, but that Juhwan is also there. And so the two of them are like running through the reed fields looking to find, where Jihad is screaming from and why he's screaming. And they come across this body. And that's when I realized I was all messed up, because at this point I'm like, oh, they did find Juson's body. So whose body is that in the beginning? So I'm thinking, oh, it must be his sister, right? Because they never found her body. And from what I can tell, the fingertips are missing on this corpse too. So when he is staring at the corpse, when Dongshik is staring at the corpse, I'm like, oh my God, this is his sister's body. And either he didn't expect them to find it, or he didn't put the body there, though he's responsible, or this man is just simply not responsible. Because I don't know why he would, if I dumped a body there, I don't know that I would be so anxious to have other people out there with me when I'm looking for this man, if that makes sense. I wouldn't want other people finding the body that I presumably, I wouldn't want people to find. But so that's when I realized I was all messed up. And I was like, okay, so I'm thinking this is his sister, but as it turns out, it's not his sister. And there's a ring on one of the cut fingers, and I think it's from that he recognizes that it couldn't be his sister. But Juwon recognizes it. He knows this woman, and there's like a flash of her like sliding something to him across the table and tapping it with her finger, and she's wearing that ring. So this is a woman that he knows. My, how the turns have tabled. So and he asks, like, he notices that. I think Dongshik notices that Juwon has like a flash of recognition, and he's like, "Do you know her? Because this ain't my sister." And like, to change the subject again, he asks him straight up, "Did you kill her?" Juwon asked Dongshik, and Dongshik just like has his flashlight shining in his face, and he kind of gets all up in his face, and he just grins really creepily and evilly, and then the episode ends. And I'm like, I don't think he did it, but goddamn, this motherfucker is weird, and they really are working overtime to make us think he did it. So episode 2, the beginning of this episode is the cops like investigating the crime scene. So clearly they've called it in. And I did like this because it's introducing us to other members of this police force, and it feels like the type of thing where I don't know a lot about this. I don't know if it's meant to go for several seasons. I don't know if this is a mini series. I don't know what happens beyond the episode I'm talking about now. So I don't even know if what I'm about to say makes sense, but it does feel like if this is the type of show that continues, like this is just a mystery for season 1 and we're going to see these people again, this feels like a really good way to set up the characters that you're going to come to know, whether it's through the rest of this series, this season, or through more stories. And it reminded me a lot of, there was a show on TNT, I think, called The Closer. And you guys know I pretty much can't watch network television anymore. I just gonna sound terrible, but like the writing and everything, it just feels super predictable. I cannot do like police procedural shows anymore. I just feel like they don't entertain me anymore. They don't challenge me at all. But back when I did watch this stuff, I did like The Closer. It starred Kira Sedgwick, and she was the star of the show, but the other detectives in her unit and that worked for her, and like, the lawyers attached to the cases and stuff, like they became supporting, they were supporting characters, and their dynamic was always fun and interesting to watch. And I kind of got that feel here where you're watching like the medical examiner and the other detectives and the crime scene techs, like, this banter that they have going back and forth. I really like that. Um, in a flashback to the day after Juson was murdered and Yu went missing, I think I said Chon, Yu we see Dongshik was absolutely arrested the very next day. Now listen. The mother is freaking out. Like, why wouldn't you? Your daughter's missing. Her fingertips were left for you the day before. Now they're arresting your son. The girl that works with your son, she was found dead the day your daughter went missing with the fingertips. Don't forget the fingertips. I get it. Mom is freaked the fuck out. Dad is freaked out. But dad, I believe, yells out, "Did you do it?" And the look on Dong Shik's face, he does himself no favors. He just makes these creepy faces. And I'm like, see, that's why they arrested you. Because you're supposed to just say no. You're not supposed to grin like the Joker. Like, what the fuck? And I get it. Like, in stressful situations, sometimes, like, a laugh reflex is a sign of just, not knowing how to respond. It's not a genuine, amused reaction to an amusing situation. It's often a bizarre reaction to a terrifying situation, and that's how your brain processes, and that's what I think it's supposed to be. Because again, I don't think Dongshik is guilty. I'm gonna say I don't think he's English. I know he's not English. I don't think he's guilty, but I do think he's weird, and I do think he doesn't do himself any favors. Um, so the boss is mad. Well, first, Dongshik and Ju want a question, like, how'd you find about it, blah blah blah. And then the boss is a little upset because he knows how it looks. He's like, why'd it have to be you? Of all the cops in the precinct, why'd it have to be you finding this body when you were the prime suspect the last time this shit happened? So the boss is a little fed up, and I get it. I get it. There's a waitress in a diner when again the boss like demands that Juwon and Dongshik go out to eat with him, and the waitress starts talking about obviously like what's going on, and the case from 20 years ago, and she doesn't realize who Dongshik is. So she's basically like, that creepy ass Dongshik, he killed those girls and now he's killing again. And I don't remember, like, does she know he's a cop at this point? She definitely doesn't know he's sitting right there at the table eating his ramen, like minding his goddamn business, while she's just like dragging him. And then like he makes it known that who he is, and she's like, "Oh yeah, sorry, yeah, just kamida." And she goes and like gets him more ramen or something. He like loves that shit though. Like, he seems to be beyond being offended that there's still some people who think that he's a murderer, but he seems to be like amused by it and kind of getting off. And I don't mean sexually, but just like, he takes pleasure in making these people uncomfortable is what I think. But that, okay, doesn't make him a murderer. It kind of makes him a dick, but I get it, because if the whole town has been treating you like this. Oh wait, speaking of which, the name of the show is Beyond Evil, but like in Hangul, in the Korean alphabet and Korean language, it says, I swear it says Kwemul, and but when it's romanized, it's like Quimul. It's like a different vowel sound, and it confuses me. So I meant to look that up and I didn't. I'll do it after the podcast, and I'll come prepared to talk about that next week. All right, so where were we? Because shit's getting interesting. So, we learn in present day that Dongshik's mom is in the hospital, and she's basically like catatonic. And she's in like a hospital care facility. And there is a man who is like a friend of the family's, I guess. And he is, I think he's like maybe special needs. I'm not sure. But he is, and not, no, I shouldn't say special needs because I don't know if one that's proper and if that's accurate. But it looks like the way he speaks to him and the way he treats him, I was wondering, well, or the way the character speaks, if he's supposed to be on the spectrum. But he is like the nicest man in the world, apparently, and he visits Dongshik's mother way more than Dongshik visits her, to the point where Dongshik's trying to, I think he's like bathing her or moisturizing her hands or doing something for her. And the guy is like, you're too rough. That's, she doesn't like it like that. This, you know. So you get that Dongshik isn't, you know, he hasn't been, I guess, as attentive to his mom as he could have been, or maybe as he should be. And again, I don't know. Like, we find out later what happens to her, like how she got this way, but I don't know, like prior to that, what kind of relationship they had. Like, did she think that her son was guilty? I don't know. So I'm curious to see how that, if we learn, when we learn, I know we will, more about what their relationship was like after the sister went missing. Um, oh, this is so. This is what I wanted to mention. So they get a call about someone like sitting out in the rain in an overpass, and I think that this person is supposed to be um, mentally delayed, and Dongshik takes really good, precious care of this man to um, alleviate his fears and to, you know, talk to him with kindness and compassion to get him out of the rain. And I thought it was so funny because it was like starting to work, and then he tells Juwon, like, he tells him something like Dongshik tells Juwon to engage the man in some way, and when he does, Juwon is like, it's okay, we're the cops. And the guy was like, I hate cops. Fucking Dongshik looked at him, because this is the second time he did it. This is when they found the old dude, Mr. Park, in the woods in the reed field in the first episode. Like, he was starting to calm down because he didn't even realize they had on police uniforms, right? He was just so like in his grief and drunk. And when Juwon goes to engage with him, he's like, we're police, it's okay, you can come with us. And this guy's like, fuck cops. Because, you know, as far as he's concerned, they haven't found who killed his daughter 20 years ago. So here, when he does it to this guy, and they had the guy all calm, and then he starts losing it again, fucking Dongshik just looks at Juwon like, will you stop telling people we're the feds? Like, just stop it. But like, this just shows, I think we find out later that Dongshik stood there in the rain with that man with an umbrella for a really long time until help arrived for him. And you know, I don't think it's an accident that they're showing us these really good sides of him. Of course, he could just be a psychopath. He could be a psychopath, but I'm hashtag team Dongshik is innocent. So that's where I am right now. Yes, even despite the way this episode ends. So Juwon goes digging on digging through some files on his day off, and he learns that the files about the case back then about Juson and Yujun's disappearance are missing. Like, there's like, if you have the folder, it's almost like when someone goes to pay ransom and then they put like real $100 bills on the top, but like under it's just like a stack of like paper cutouts. I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah, it's like if you open a file, the first page is like the file, right? But then it's just like nothing. It's so, and he complains. Now, he complains to, he says something to, Jongjae, and it turns out he is the chief of Central Affairs, of General Affairs. I think that's his title because he says it later. And when he goes to, when Juwon goes to him and says all the documents on this case are like missing, it's clear to me this guy is lying, right? Jung Jae is like, look, we move a lot, we lost some boxes. It's just so clear to me. And I'm like, oh, he's sus, right? But then later, Jung Jae confronts Dongshik. He's like, are you still digging in this case? Like, are you still looking into this? Because the files are missing. So it's like, did he do that to cover for himself, or are we to believe that Dongshik really did take all that information? Because he does have, as does Juwon, like this beautiful mind board set up with like case file clipping, like newspaper clippings and all this information. So he is definitely still has been thinking about the case, but I don't know if we're supposed to believe he's monitoring it because he's guilty, or he's just, obsessed with finding out who the fuck killed his sister. So, and then the boss tells Juwon to leave it because he got word that on his day off, Juwon went digging through. So I was like, did Jungjae snitch? Like, how did he know? But I think it was the boss brings this up. Like Dongshik told him in episode 1, everybody's watching. The town is small. Everybody knows everybody. Everybody knows your business. You think that you're doing something and that, nobody knows. Everybody knows. They can see you. So I thought it was really interesting that, one, that turns out to be right. But two, the boss even said, he says, Dongshik told you everybody has eyes, something like that. And I'm like, how do you know that? Like, that was like I thought that was a private conversation. I don't remember the boss being there for that. But anyway, it's through this conversation with the boss and Juwon that we learn that the father, Dongshik's father, after the sister went missing, he would go sit on this, I think the same place that they found the other guy sitting in the rain, like this overpass for hours. And he would be waiting for her. And then one day he like froze to death out there waiting for her. And the mother found him. And then through the flashback, we see her screaming over his dead body. And then she stares up at the sky and her face just goes still. And like, that's supposed to be the moment that broke her. So I think she's been in this catatonic state in this hospital since her husband died, and he died of hypothermia overnight on a bridge waiting for the return of their missing daughter. And it is the most depressing shit I've ever heard. And no wonder Dongshik's all fucked up. Like, his life has just been a mess. So, now, there is a waitress. You guys gotta forgive me because when they go, we see a lot of them, the cops. So it's like Dongshik, Juwon, his new partner, Ji-hwa, who is Dongshik's partner. And then I think Ji-hwa's sister is a cop. She works in like, she works in like sex crimes, like unit, I think, like special crimes. And she meets with them. And then there's like Jong-jae, I believe, is one of the crew. And maybe one other guy. I'll get those names later, but they all meet in this the restaurant that's next to the butcher shop, right? And the waitress, her name is Min. Oh my god, why did I not write her name down? I think it's Min Jong. Oh my god, her last name is Min, M-I-N. But I'm gonna get it for next time because clearly she's now super important. So she goes off, and I'm trying to remember like who her dad is. I gotta go. I'm so sorry, you guys. I gotta do my digging. But she goes off. I think she goes to Seoul to party, and she ends up, I don't know if she just got drunk and this guy was about to take advantage of her, but somehow Dongshik shows up at this apartment or whatever in Seoul. And he like puts the fear of God in this guy, and he takes her and he takes her back home. But because she's so messed up, like he puts her in a jail cell to like sleep it off, right? Because she's super drunk. Her dad would be disappointed. And she's like, please don't tell my dad. And then because of the investigation, like around the dead girl, who as it turns out is not his sister. I think they do forensics. It's not Dongshik's sister. They don't know who it is, although we know that Juwon knows. And Juwon meets with his father, the second top cop, and it's clear he knows who the woman is. And he's like, do nothing. Do not solve this case, because if they find out who she is, it fucks us both. And I'm like, great. What the fuck is this? So, but in that, when they're like, I think there's like some news conference, it's something where all the cops in the precinct, their attention is on this thing, so they don't see her leave. They don't see her sneak out. and she's supposed to go home, but she goes somewhere else. And she left her house keys in the jail cell, like she dropped them. So Dong Shik finds them and he calls her and she's like, "Oh, I'm home." And he's like, "Really?" And she goes, "Yeah, I had to sneak in and da da da." And he's like, "You're lying because I have your house keys. How'd you get in the house?" And we see that she's not home. She's like on that like bridge overpass or something. I'm like, why do people keep going to this spot? Because clearly, nothing good happens here. But she's still on the phone with him when someone approaches and she turns around and we don't see the person, but she smiles because it's clearly someone she knows, right? Right. So I'm like, this girl's dead, right? Like this is the pattern. She's dead. And I'm like, it can't be Dong Shik because she was on the phone with him, right? Unless it is him. But the next day, Juwon goes to. Now, I'm going to admit something. I need to watch this scene again. I need to watch it again. And then I'll talk about it on the next podcast. I don't want to talk about it too much because there's certain parts of it I didn't understand, and I definitely need to watch it again. I don't want to waste your time. So I'm going to watch that scene again. But at the end of the scene, and I think it's like the next day, right? Fucking. Oh, wait. I missed something. I'm sorry. So after we see Min meet somebody, we don't see who it is. Fucking Dong Shik shows up at the restaurant with all his cop friends there, and his eyes look a little bloodshot, and he's clearly like stressed and hiding something and not acting like himself. And everybody else is like eating and toasting and drinking and hanging and chilling, and he's sitting there like, I just murdered a girl. I know that's what they want us to think. And I'm telling you, I don't think he did, but he's looking mighty sus. So the next day, while he's outside talking to Juwon, what does he find? Fingertips. And they're clearly Min. I think her name is Jong. I think. I have to look it up. But you know what? Why don't I just do that now? So I could stop not saying this girl's name. But he finds her fingertips. And we know it's her fingertips because like when she fell asleep in the jail cell at one point, like he covered her up with a blanket and they focus on her nails and they're all like bejeweled and dazzly and shit. So it's like, okay, that is her. What is her name? Let me see if I can get the whole cast. Hold on. So he sees her fingers and he fucking starts bawling. Oh, I'm such an idiot. Her last name is Kang and her name is Min Young. That's her name. That's it. I knew it was like Ming in there. So her last name is Kang. So Min Young, he sees her fingers and he starts bawling. Like, now I see why he won this award. What did I say it was called? The Baeksang Award? Because, yeah. He was, and I was like, see, he didn't do it. Look at him. He's all sad and broken up and everything. And this affects Juwon, right? Like he sees the fingers there. He calls it in, I think. And he's watching Dong Shik like lose his shit. He's like, wow, maybe I was wrong about him. But guess what? We get a flashback to the night before, and there's a guy in a dark hoodie putting those fingertips on the bench. And who is it? Dong Shik. I still don't think he did it, though. I don't think he did. It just, it's too obvious, right? Like, it's too obvious to actually be him. So, anyway, that's where I stand on the show so far. That is what has happened. I am completely in. Like, I'm here for this. I like this. I like this a lot. I'm going to check and see if there's any feedback. I don't think so because this is fairly quick and fast and all of that. So I will be back next Friday. Yeah, next Friday to talk about the next two episodes. I'm super curious to see how, if it is, how they explain Dong Shik putting them fingers there. Like, did he go find the fingers? Like, did he go look for her and he found the fingers and then he's setting it up there because he wants to draw the killer out? I don't know. But the fact that it's somebody she knows tells me it's one of those fucking cops. And right now my money is on Central Affairs, Chief of Central Affairs. I think that's his title. Jongjae? I think that's his name. Yeah. Choi, or is it Lee? No. Choi. Anyway. He's sus. I think it's him. That's who the early money on is for me. It's on him because I think he did it. So anyway, I have got to go now because I've got to moderate a discussion of Loki. Big episode this week, episode 4 on Clubhouse. So if you've not yet joined Clubhouse, you might want to do that because we have a lot of fun, mainly on the weekends, talking about the Disney Plus shows. Sometimes we do game night over there. So if you need an invite, just hit us up in our Facebook group for that. That's it. Thank you guys for listening. Me and Kaylee will be back on Sunday to discuss Attack on Titan episodes 8 through 10. I'm so excited for that. And me and Donnie will be discussing the first 2 episodes of Money Heist this weekend. And of course, me, John, and Donnie will be back next week for more Loki and Sweet Tooth. And me and Kaylee with more Attack on Titan. A lot of good stuff coming up. Happy you're subscribed. Happy you're listening. Thanks for listening. And I'll talk to you next time.